So tiny, so frail, and they've already lived through so much. More than 30 babies evacuated from al-Shifa to a hospital near the Rafah crossing. Tomorrow, they'll be taken to Egypt.
Some of them had sepsis and severe inflammation. We started a quick resuscitation process for them at the hospital.
The heroic efforts that you've made, I mean, I have no words.
Staff from the World Health Organization were allowed a brief visit to al-Shifa, now under the control of the Israeli army. They described it as a death zone. Around 300 patients and 25 medics remain. Everyone else has fled. The Israeli army assault on Gaza is intensifying. They're seeking to consolidate control of northern Gaza, even as they appear to be preparing to move to the south, where it's suggested Hamas's leadership now is. This footage released by the military from inside Gaza City. In Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, bodies line a hospital courtyard. A woman stretches out her hand, how to let go of so many loved ones. There are no words, and the grief chokes her. It's too much to bear.
The situation is becoming harder and tougher on people, and the bloodshed isn't stopping. There hasn't been any Arab, regional or international actions, and the green light given to the enemy to exterminate the people.
Adding to the misery for the more than 1.5 million displaced people in Gaza. Torrential rains today beating down on flimsy tents, amidst no sign of an end to the violence.
Well, Secunda joins me now from Tel Aviv. Secunda, there are again reports today that a deal for the release of Israeli hostages held in Gaza might be close. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right, Jackie. I mean, for weeks now, we've been reporting about the outlines of a possible deal that would see a significant number of those hostages released in exchange for a temporary pause to the fighting. Today, the Prime Minister of Qatar, which has been mediating those talks, said that only minor logistical issues remain to be resolved. A senior US official said that we've never been closer to a deal. You can imagine the psychological strain all of this is really taking on the families, hoping but not knowing. And of course, even if a deal is reached, one that would see potentially children and their mothers released, well, that would still leave a significant number of hostages still inside Gaza.
And also news tonight that a cargo ship has been hijacked off the coast of Yemen by Iranian-backed Houthi forces. What do we know?
Yeah, this is a commercial ship that was travelling from Turkey towards India when it was hijacked by Houthi forces in the Red Sea. Now, the Houthis are part of what's known as the Axis of Resistance. It's an Iranian-backed coalition of forces that also includes Hezbollah and Hamas. The Houthis have in the past fired missiles towards Israel in recent weeks as well. And this ship, we're told it had around 50 crew members on board, none of whom were Israeli. It's owned by a British company, but reportedly that British company is linked to an Israeli tycoon, and the Houthis have said that any Israeli-linked ship travelling in the Red Sea will be targeted by them. Back briefly to events in Gaza, and tonight the Israeli military has said that it's discovered a significant tunnel beneath the al-Shifa hospital complex. The United Nations has also released some strong statements condemning events yesterday where we saw 2 UN schools struck and dozens of people reportedly killed who were sheltering inside.
Secunda, thanks very much. Well, let's take a closer look at the situation in al-Shifa hospital. Earlier, I spoke to Dr. Margaret Harris from the World Health Organization and began by asking her what the team that visited found there.
They found 32 babies in extremely critical condition, and most of those babies we have now been able to evacuate out. That's today's good news, that they are now in neonatal intensive care in a hospital in southern Gaza.
I mean, as you say, one tiny bit of good news amid all of this desperate news. That was a very striking image of those premature babies with no incubators to care for them. The operation to evacuate them, extremely complicated, I imagine.
Extremely complicated. It took 6 ambulances and, again, a fantastic efforts from the Palestinian Red Cross and a lot of planning and work with, there was a neonatologist, a specialist who had stayed with the babies in the hospital. And of course, the goodwill of those who received the babies, because the desperately ill people from al-Shifa were evacuating them to other hospitals. They're already overburdened, they're already overstretched, and they're already running out of supplies and fuel and staff, because so many staff have been killed as well.
I mean, as you say, al-Shifa no longer really able to function properly as a hospital. One of the reasons the Israeli military focused on al-Shifa is because the Israelis believe that it has been operating as a Hamas command centre. Now, I know your team weren't in there for very long, but did they see any evidence to prove or disprove that?
So you're right. The WHO was in the hospital to evaluate its capacity to function as a hospital only, and we were only given a short period of time to do that. And our focus was the welfare of the patients and the health workers. We didn't look for, but we also didn't observe any signs of any other use. But again, it's important to note that this was not our role or focus. But what we did see, as we've just discussed, was patients in a dire situation.
And on exactly that point, you know, it's a situation that's being replicated across Gaza. How critical is a ceasefire now?
Absolutely critical. It should have happened weeks ago, but the world cannot stand by and continue to watch this without understanding that we are all responsible.
You say, you know, this is on the world's shoulders, as it were. You know, the Israeli government have consistently said this doesn't stop until they have eradicated Hamas. What can the world, international governments do to bring about a ceasefire, given that?
Well, those who can put the pressure on the warring parties to come down on the side of humanity and not on hate, they have to do it. It's got to stop now.
Dr. Margaret Harris, thank you very much for talking to us today. Thank you.
Thank you.